Tonight, the S&P 500 is at lifetime highs. Is it a market miracle or market madness? The great big beautiful bill, or is it the great big fiscal spill? Which is it? And Nvidia at $4 trillion is now the largest stock in history and larger than all but 5 economies in the entire world. It's Thursday, July 10th. From Chicago, this is CB3 Live. The market miracle or madness, it just doesn't seem to make sense, does it? Because there's so much consternation in the world, and yet here we are at the 27th lifetime high in the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ is right behind it. So on this record run, both of them have surged because of robust jobs data, easing inflation, and a broadening rally that now includes not just the tech sector, but also energy and financials. We are not seeing all 11 sectors participate just yet, and that's why we are not full speed ahead in our allocation in all of our programs. We are fully invested, but we have a little bit of a conservative bent because it's the huge companies in the aggressive sectors that are pulling the market forward, and that's good. But we need to see all sectors participate. We had a strong jobs report last Thursday, a better report than expected, and the tech leadership from Nvidia and Tesla has led the charge. So in general, we're really pleased with that. President Trump's new tariffs, especially on imports through Vietnam. So you've been reading about this where China and Russia have been circumventing the tariffs by passing their goods through Vietnam. But now President Trump is clamping down on that by hitting Vietnam really hard. We'll get more to that when we cover tariffs in just a little bit. And the volatility index, the VIX, down again in the 16 handle. This is the fear gauge. We like to see this below 16. Once the VIX gets below 16, as I said last month, and stays there for at least a couple weeks, it generally does not rise again until the next cyclical bear market, which can be months. We'll see if that happens this time, but that's what it's looking like. So where's the madness and what's going to be next for July? Well, we have new tariffs. Even literally every day, and just as recently as today, 100% tariff levied on somebody, and I've lost track of it, honestly, because we've been getting ready for the show. The Federal Reserve minutes are coming out, and key earnings reports coming this week and next week as the second quarter earnings begin. July could definitely see some sharp swings, and the valuations, because we're at market highs, are somewhat strong, somewhat inflated, I think, in some areas, but weak in others. So the great big beautiful bill, is it a beautiful bill or huge fiscal spill? Anytime that a bill needs the vice president to cast a tiebreaker in the Senate is not exactly a huge mandate for success, but it did get done. It was signed by the president on July 4th. Immediate factory deductions, so factory owners can deduct the cost of new or improved buildings. Expected to spark a rush of construction. I think that's great. The bill includes net tax cuts of $4.5 trillion and spending cuts of $1.2 trillion. So the news you're hearing is that this isn't going to actually do anything but add to the deficit, and that's just not true. Adding funding for clean energy. I realize there's going to be cuts, I should say, in funding for clean energy, health, and nutrition programs. We're going to have a longer segment in this going forward. But the immediate impact on SNAP and Medicaid, and I'm going to differentiate between what you're hearing in the media. It's not that the benefits are going away or even being reduced. They have to be earned. So for people that are able-bodied, you have to at least work 20 to 30 hours a week, and it can be in a volunteer position. All right, we'll get more into that a little bit later on, but the clean energy cuts, I realize if you're a big clean energy fan, the additional bonuses there are going to be going away, and I don't know if they're going to be 1 million jobs lost, but that's possible scenario, okay? So a lot of changes there on the return to endorsing fossil fuels. Corporate tax change, so this bill modifies the BEAT tax. In other words, beat the taxes. If you are smart enough on the corporate level to have a multinational company and have a corporation over in Ireland or something, that's going to be done away with, and that's actually a good thing in my mind, because it was a workaround in the 2017 Trump era, but they're now fixing in this second term. So short-term boost for businesses, especially in manufacturing, they're going to benefit from tax relief. Long-term risk, though, cuts to social programs. Not sure what that has implications for as far as the states and us as investors, although it will withdraw some discretionary spending. Obviously, it's a financial show. I'm not trying to make social commentary here. I'm just saying that if social programs are being cut and people have to shift money from discretionary spending to mandatory spending, that could affect the markets, all right? And certainly lead to higher local taxes or reduced services. Now, Nvidia's meteoric rise, check this out. All right, the stock rose 2.5% to 164 just yesterday. Today, it hit yet another lifetime high. Their chips are literally the backbone of the entire current AI boom. I mean, they just had everything timing right perfectly to have this be ready. Now, I'm not saying they got lucky. I'm saying they've been a company for 30 years. And if you look at them on a chart, which you can see on the left-hand sides, this meteoric rise did not start until late 2023 and then just went crazy after that, bypassing Microsoft and Apple. All right. So the race to build an AI infrastructure is driving massive investment for companies worldwide, furthering Nvidia's growth. And it's going to power the tech sector. I said this in my opening line, 7.5% of the S&P's value. Think about that, folks, the trillions of dollars in the S&P 500, 55 or 60 trillion, 7.5% of that is one company. If you add Microsoft and Apple to that, those three companies are one out of every $4, 25%. Of the S&P 500 is in three, maybe it's four stocks, but it's three or four stocks. It's astounding. The haves and have-nots, but it's just the technological, it's really the reindustrialization of America. And we're seeing it happen in our lifetime right before our eyes. Despite its size, though, Nvidia's PE ratio is actually below its 5-year average, which is why we have a 12% weighting. The largest weighting I've ever had for a stock. We did actually, I should not say that. We had a 15% weighting. Go back to on camera here. We had a 15% weighting in Nvidia some time ago on their meteoric rise. I just pulled it back to 12 because it just seemed way too risky. But that's not in CG and GI, guys. That's in DS. But nonetheless, we're expecting that there's still plenty of upside potential there. However, there are risks. Ongoing negotiations with China, not especially going well, certainly not going well with Japan. And Vietnam is pushing back too. But they can only push back for so long or lose the biggest market in the world. The U.S. is a $30.5 trillion economy. China's at 19, Germany's at 4.7, and everybody else is just a rounding error compared to the two big dogs. You guys have seen this chart many, many times. 100 years in the S&P 500, only 3 secular bear markets, 3 secular bull markets. We are in one right now. We're continuing to make lifetime highs this year. That said, unless you're in an index fund in the S&P, you are not participating in that. You may be outperforming in that in some programs. But what we want to say is, what we want to see is what I said earlier, is that all 11 sectors participate in this huge return to the bullish behavior. The snapback from the April 2nd low was pretty dramatic. We've seen these V corrections, V-shaped corrections technically, for years now, and they continue. We still need to be prudent because one of these days there will be a downturn like 2022 or 2008. So that is why we continue to be prudent in our investing. But in general, it's very good for the economy. It's very good for all the portfolios when the S&P and NASDAQ are hitting new highs. Earnings just barely coming out, 19. Now, the next time I see you, we'll be in the 250 to 275 company range. But already technology, 100% of the companies reporting have beaten their estimates for the previous quarter. Coming in at about 74%, you can see there on the top. And I think it's reasonable to assume that we're going to have a pretty good earnings season in spite of all the negatives that you hear. U.S. policy always in the forefront, especially with this president. But we hate politics, but it does lead to policy. As we know, it just got signed on July 4th, a huge, huge bill. It has policy, leads to portfolio impact, and obviously portfolio impact leads to personal impact. So there he is, and we're still dealing with the tariffs, and we will be for some time. The U.S. still has nearly the highest tariff rate in the world. On any given day, that can change because Trump can decide to take them away. He can decide to just place a tariff on copper. We'll get to that later on, and cause the greatest single move in copper in 1 hour in history. So it's just an uncertain time. I'll have a comment on that in just a few minutes as well. So realize that we are way over here to the right, and these companies on the left, countries on the left, need us. They need us more than we need them. And as opposed to having empathy on those countries, which is what previous administrations, Republican and Democrat, have had, this president is saying, you know what? we've been taken advantage of for too long, and it's not going to happen anymore. It's going to be uncomfortable for a few months. And this has to get done by the year before the midterm. So November of this year, this really has to get done. And if it doesn't, the Republicans are going to get shellacked in November of 2026, in my opinion. So these deals have to start getting done. I thought we would have more of them by now, but these countries are pushing back because they've had it easy for so long. They don't want to give up their imbalance advantage, their import imbalance advantage. All right. They just don't want to give it up. You can understand that. South Korea, Vietnam, Japan, those have all stalled out. We will watch to see if that changes in the next week or so. So his Trump tariffs are the highest since 1909. So over 100 years. I've shown this chart one other time, but it's worth showing again. I updated it. And you can just see the spike there. Nothing really comes close to it except back in the 1800s and, happened twice in the 1800s. It's almost unheard of. But again, that's why we had to do this. That's why he feels he had to do this, because things have been out of balance. And it's not good for the American economy for it to be out of balance, because it eventually comes out of our taxpayer money. So this rebound that we've seen since April 2nd, okay, so Trump came into office. You can see the timeline here, the fentanyl tariffs, okay, China, Canada, Mexico. Nothing much happened in the S&P there, but then Trade Liberation Day, there's the spike down, and then there's the big spike up. That was a 10.5% up day, and then it continued back down to the downside. For those of you wondering, why weren't we in that 10.5% day? Because the market had screamed at us, okay, this is going to take a while to work out. And so we're back in full strength right now. And you can see we're participating to the upside. The Geneva deal, when all the major economies met in Geneva, the market has responded well to that. In general, you can't really blame the market for being unsettled during this, because there's never been anything like it in my lifetime. The previous chart just showed you that. We haven't had dramatic tariffs like this in more than 100 years. In some cases, more than 170 years. So we've got it now, and that's what we're trying to work through. All right, so the big, beautiful, yes, that's intentionally spelled that way, bill. I want to go into some more detail on this because it's important, because it affects all of us, all right? There are going to be significant changes in Americans, that's plural, personal finance. So this bill, which is no longer a bill, it's law, locks into Trump's 2017 tax cuts. That's the most important thing it does, is sustains those into permanent law. They don't expire. Now, obviously, the next Congress could come along and overturn this law. They would have to have a substantial majority to do it. It cannot be done with reconciliation. So it would need a 60-vote majority in the Senate. Okay? So including deductions for tips, you've been hearing about this. Waiters and waitresses love this. Overtime pay, auto loan interest, that's come back after about, 10 years, 12 years that we didn't have that as a write-off, unless you were a business. All right, and this special $6,000 deduction for seniors. We'll get into that in just a few pages here. At the same time, the Republican-backed bill enacts significant requirements. That's the operative word, requirements, not cuts. All right, it means that if you want to receive Medicaid benefits, again, you didn't pay for these, right? Medicare, you're paying into. Social Security, you're paying into. That is an earned entitlement. Medicaid is a free entitlement. And if you're going to accept that, you need to prove that you are totally disabled and cannot work, or you're a single mother or father with, I don't know how many kids, but it's more than 2, and you can't work any at all, and then you'll continue to get your benefits. But you can see where this is going. The majority of the people that have been receiving this will receive it if they need it. If they don't, they're going to not be on Medicaid and food assistance, all right? I understand that the tax incentive for clean energy is disappointing to some too, but basically the overhaul of the federal student loan system has needed to happen. You've seen the battles in this. What we're trying to do, again, it's very difficult not to tiptoe into social commentary here, but as a portfolio manager, when I see The populace in general having their discretionary spending altered because they're having to direct money to necessities away from discretionary. That's when I have to really pay attention for you, because it affects the kinds of stocks we're buying. We might buy more of Procter and Gamble and less of Nvidia if people are turning to, en masse, turning to more necessities than discretionary spending. But at the heart of this legislation is the permanent extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act during his first term. That law reduced marginal tax rates, and that's a good thing, 2 to 4%. The standard deduction will increase now to $15,700 and $31,000 for married couples. That means if you're making less than $31,000, you're not paying a nickel. Realize that more than 50% of Americans do not pay any substantial taxes, federal taxes at all. So this is further help to those to get basically to join that class of people that aren't paying, but it does keep that money in the discretionary spending category, we hope. At least that's what the current administration is running. This is called supply side economics, all right? That if you just give people enough money and they spend, it will increase revenue, it will increase overall tax revenue by giving them tax cuts. I know it seems contradictory, but it's not. The child tax credit card, let's try it again. The child tax credit grows, this is a lot of data, folks, grows to $2,200 and then up to $1,700 refundable with future increases indexed to inflation. There's a couple other benefits here, which I'll get to, but all of these are reductions, all right? Tax reductions. Republicans like tax reductions. They're supply side people. They believe if you reduce taxes, people will take that money and spend it, which makes more widgets for the companies, and they report higher earnings and stocks go up, etc. But rather than essentially fully eliminating taxes on Social Security, the bill provides a $6,000 annual deduction. All right, it's important for you to understand they're not just erasing the Social Security tax that you have to pay, but they are giving you an annual deduction. So the deduction phases out if you make more than 75 as a single person or 150,000 as a couple. And if you make more than 175, you're not going to get the deduction at all. So when you see in the news, oh, the people over 400,000, they're going to love this. No, it starts at 175. The average working person that's making under 175,000, and I think that's about 70% of Americans, are definitely going to benefit if they're working in retirement or they're getting their Social Security benefit and they've stopped working. It's no longer going to be taxed, all right, because they're going to use this credit. The Social Security Administration, that's SSA, estimates that nearly 90% of beneficiaries will see no federal taxes on their benefits under this change. Read that again, please. The SSA estimates that nearly 90% of the beneficiaries will see no federal taxes. So this act should provide immediate relief to seniors. That would be quite a few people on this call, but not all of them, have spent a lifetime contributing to the nation's economy, and that's most of us. All right, I'm just going to pause and say that I even got an email from the Social Security Administration saying, we heartily approve of this. It's going to make things more solvent for us. Very good. And you guys are going to be glad you don't have to pay more taxes. You're going to get a break on that, except for you real big earners, and then you don't really care. So that's a big benefit to many of the people watching this program. So these expanded tax breaks under the bill will reduce the overall tax burden on Social Security recipients by $30 billion each year. And that's not from White House, that's from the Tax Foundation. If you look in the footer here, you're going to see a whole lot of credits, the longest credit line I've ever had, because we used a lot of sources to compile this data. So as I said earlier, I want to be sure you understand, is there no tax on Social Security? Not quite. What the tax mega bill really means for seniors is this: the enhanced standard deduction will offset what recipients pay in tax benefits, all right? The enhanced deduction, which expires in 2028, conveniently when Donald Trump leaves office. So the next person coming in, whether it be a Republican or Democrat, will have to face, are we going to extend this? All right? So the drama is already set for us for 2028 and 2029. All right. But it means that people age 65 plus can claim a $6,000 deduction if their income is $75,000 or less, or married couples up to $12,000 if their combined income is $150,000 or less, right? That's most people. So the deduction begins to phase out, as I mentioned earlier, $175, and for couples with an income of $250, it's just not going to benefit them. This is a cool feature. One of the bill's novel features is the creation of a new Trump account for children born 2025 and through 2028. Now, this can be for your children. It can be for your grandchildren, all right? Pretty cool. So let's see how this works. Under the provision, the federal government will make a one-time $1,000 deposit for every eligible child who is a U.S. citizen. Parents can contribute, and grandparents should have put that in there, but they can, up to $5,000 with investments going into a tax-deferred fund that tracks the S&P. For the first time, holy cow, the government is actually offering an indexed fund that's tracking the S&P as opposed to putting it in Social Security. Who knows how they've invested our Social Security money? We didn't have any choice in that. And I'm sure I would have chosen differently than the government did. But this is a step forward into the 21st century, all right? It's a good thing. Withdrawals from the account will be taxed at long-term capital gains as opposed to short. Remember, you're funding it with short-term money, so you should be taxed as short-term gains, but it's not. It's going to be long-term gains used for qualified purpose, and a qualified purpose is for education. All right, I am going to move to the next slide, but I'm going to get a sip of water here. That was a lot. Welcome, Deb in South Florida, and all of you guys that are on this. I hope, think of your questions, okay? I'm sure there's a lot. Just type them in the chat box. You can see it over there, and I'll answer them if I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you in the next day or so. So further in the political thing, I just wanted to update you on NATO. So, you know, you hear all about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? I bet you don't know that this started even before I was born in 1949. Norway, the UK, France, Belgium, Italy, interestingly not Germany, they joined in 1949 along with Canada and the US and Iceland and Northern Ireland. Let's don't forget that, and Portugal of all places. And just look at the colors on the screen. You can see over the years until last year, the most recent joinee, if you will, joinee is Sweden. Okay. Now, question. Let's see who's paying attention here in the sidebar chat. Which of the countries on this map or the map on the right-hand side have the longest border with Russia? Border with Russia. Which one? Just type it in the chat. Here's why this is important. Russia is not part of NATO. The whole point of NATO is to protect these countries, and they unite together to protect themselves against aggression with Russia, against Russia or the Soviet Union as it was known at the time of this founding. So, but you can see these members now have committed to meeting the spending goal of 2%. In fact, Trump is saying, by the time I leave office, I'm expecting the biggest countries to share 5% of their GDP in NATO support. And it should be, because we have an ocean between us. We have been consistently funding most of NATO. Look at the numbers here. All right. US 3.38. The requirement for all these other nations is 2%. And you might say, well, we're the biggest country. We should put in 3.38. We're not going to get invaded by Russia. Not going to happen. Okay. And by the way, neither is Iran going to invade the U.S. They found that out, but I digress. Okay. So there you go. That's the NATO thing. I highly recommend you. I said this last time. I'll say it again tonight. Highly recommend you become comfortable with the term strategic uncertainty. Strategic uncertainty will ensure that the U.S. gets the best trading deals, and for that matter, the best geopolitical deals. And no one values nor implements this strategy better than Donald Trump. It has not been an easy or comfortable time as a portfolio manager with Mr. Trump in office. I do believe in the long run, when he leaves office, whether we like him, whether we like his means and ways, whether, in my case, I get very frustrated with the knee jerks. I was fortunately on the right side of that copper move, but It could have been really, really ugly for a lot of people because there's just no, it seemed planning, but it's just strategic uncertainty. That's a phrase I've just made up. It's just got to be. He's strategically uncertain. Get used to it. We've still got 3.5 more years of it. The Fed, and there he is, Jay Powell, maybe the most hated man in the White House right now. So the Fed, also known as federal, that's really what it's called, federal funds rate or the Fed funds rate, on a trajectory downward, but Jay Powell is loath to send it there. And in my opinion, it is because he loathes Donald Trump. Powell is saying that he's not going to lower rates because of the tariff uncertainty. Not so much. I think it is absolutely personal. That's just my opinion. Nonetheless, we are not seeing rates drop, although the rate is held steady at 4.25 to 4.5. Remember, it's a spread between the two rates. It has been for about 15 years now. The updated Fed projections suggest a somewhat downgraded 2025 outlook versus March, with the median growth projections slightly declining. So if growth is slowing, we need to have rates cut. He can see that projection, okay, from the Office of Management and Budget and Management. He can see that. But again, he's letting the tariffs trump, couldn't resist, his decision-making process. And of course, he's only one of 12 votes, but he highly influences the rest of them. I see the Fed cutting. We here at CB3 see them cutting twice this year, possibly in September, possibly again in November. But this tariff-driven inflation could delay further cuts or could delay all cuts if inflation creeps back up. This is a history. You probably weren't listening to me. Well, I wasn't around with Paul Volcker, okay? Well, I was around, but I wasn't doing the show. You see what I'm saying? So there's just a brief overview of the past Fed chairs. I have to say chairs, can't say chairmen because of Janet Yellen there. Look at the stock returns. And who's leading? Janet Yellen. Almost 12% returns under her 4 years of running the Fed. Ben Bernanke had the poorest at 5.2. Jerome Powell, not too bad at 7.8. Greenspan, just a tiny bit below Greenspan. And then Volcker, second best, because Volcker almost single-handedly commandeered in the same way Jimmy Hoffa, but not a negative way like Jimmy Hoffa, but just had an iron glove with the Fed and said, we are going to not calm inflation, but kill it. And I think that's how Jay Powell wants to be remembered, as the Fed chairman since Paul Volcker that did that. Just my opinion, but there you go. There's some history of the Fed chair people. Inflation, I know that Mr. Powell thinks it's really in bad shape, but folks, for the 5th month in a row, inflation data released by the Trump administration, I understand, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics came in lower than expected. Consumer price index on the left, less food and energy. Commodities, less food and energy. Yeah, a little bit of spike in commodities there. Yeah, and we found that out big time with copper. But again, that's tariff related. And service industry, less energy. You always have to take energy out. We don't always have to, but you should, because energy prices are so volatile depending on just supply and demand that they can yank around the consumer price index in an unfair way. So that's why they often show the data withdrawing energy from that. So I got a new segment for you, rapid fire responses. These are questions that have come in to me, topics that have been mentioned to me, or in a couple of these cases, I just thought that you ought to, be aware of it. And rather than me drone on and on about it, I'm just going to give you some quick responses. So what happened with copper? All right. So copper is normally a pretty boring market compared to gold or silver or crude oil, natural gas. All right. The pound. British pound, but not on Tuesday. Holy cow. 50% tariff on imports and a move that just caused a 17% jump on Tuesday. But what does this mean for us? Okay, I'm not just going to tell you these stories for the fun of it. Copper-related equities and commodities are experiencing extreme volatility, and for that reason, we're not buying them now. There's definitely inflation risk here. However, in my opinion, this extreme pricing will be short-lived. The spike is tied to tariff uncertainty. Why? Because the move of this commodity and the companies like Frederick Moran, that's not right. something Moran, and I just can't remember it right now. But Freeport Moran, there it is, big copper producer. And of course, their stock was all over the place. So I'm not putting that in your portfolios until we get some sort of direction. If copper is going to have a permanent tariff on it to keep companies like Chile, who send us a bunch of copper, from flooding our market, I'll be watching it. That's one of the things you're paying me to do. Okay. That's the copper story. Dividend stocks outperforming the broader market. Hard to believe, but after lagging the market 7 of the last 8 years, the Morningstar Dividend Leaders has rebounded this year, climbing 6.5%, more than double the 3% gain on the Morningstar U.S. Market Index. I know some of you have been somewhat frustrated, I get it, with GI, the Growth and Income Program, underperforming, and yet people are selling some of the high-flying stocks, except for Nvidia and a few others, all right, and saying, this market's going up really fast, really far. I want to settle back. I want a good dividend. And so we are watching that very carefully. We are not in any way, shape, or fashion giving up on GI. It's been a strong performer. We believe it will continue to be. And this data right here says that we are still on track, and you might consider increasing your allocation. Give me a call or email. You know the number and email address, right? If you want to see a little bit more dividends and move a little risk out of the market, if you have both a CG and a GI account with us. So small cap stocks, I should say, showing relative strengths. This almost seems like a contradiction. So we got small cap, which is probably the riskiest asset class, but we also have dividend stocks, which are the conservative asset class, both growing. All right. Piper Sandler, an international multi-investment bank, sent a note to clients saying that the combination of better than expected economic data, easing global trade tensions, I wouldn't say easing. I'd say maybe not just super intense. All right. But that's their word. And supportive monetary policy is underpinning the current bull market. And they say maybe this is the time to add more small caps. So what are we doing here? We are adding small and mid cap exposure additional in CG and DS. We've done so in the last 60 days. We continue to monitor. DS is a little restricted because that program is in AI and the Mag 8. Remember, it's the Mag 7 plus Warren Buffett. Berkshire makes it the Mag 8. But we have plenty of room for some low price, small cap stocks to really move. We just bought one this week in CG. So we're excited to see how this can develop. All right. Pharmaceutical sector. Why aren't we seeing pharmaceutical stocks? I have some of you guys that have been with me for all said, I used to see Baxter in there, and I used to see AbbVie, and I used to see Abbott Labs. I said, well, we've had all of those in there. But because the drug makers are being whipsawed by this tariff situation, all right, Trump indicated he could offer pharmaceutical manufacturers at least a year before applying a 200% tariff on foreign-made products. That should be good for domestic producers like AbbVie and Abbott Labs. But you just never know how it's going to turn out. Eli Lilly would be in that group as well. So the healthcare sector is experiencing tariff-related volatility. For that reason, we're not adding any more at this time. This one-year grace period helps us, but it's not a guarantee that things are going to stay on keel. So what's the summary here? The themes that I just mentioned in the quick answer section. Commodity inflation hedge, we're watching this. We've added energy stocks in GI and CG. So you'll see Exxon, you'll see XLE, which is an ETF that's in the energy sector. European and Asian. Not too fond of Asian right now, but we do have European ETFs in both CG and GI. Dividend paying stocks. So we're continuing to load up. In fact, we've increased our minimum for a GI stock to have as far as the amount it pays in a dividend based on some of the information I've given you tonight. And then tactical allocation to small cap stocks. We still like that space, especially in CG, and there's some really nice, we added a really cool one today. If you get your statement, you see it, and you want to ask me about it, you can, okay? I need to keep it as generic as I can on the show, but and then our priorities, we're going to watch for this August 1st. Remember that yesterday, July 9th, was supposed to be the big day when all the tariffs got reinstated. Well, they didn't. They got moved to August 1st. So we're watching that. The Fed policy uncertainty, of course, geopolitical tensions just seems like, I don't know about you, but it seems like this whole Iran-Israel thing just went away. Maybe it's because Iran is saying, yeah, there's really nothing we can do here. So, but obviously Ukraine and Russia is still very much in the forefront. But this next critical day for us is August 1st, and we'll be watching that. And I want to start here on money in motion. Now, we started this last month. We got a lot of people saying they really liked it. Not all the people watching the show, but we're doing some marketing. We got people kind of around the world watching the short versions of this. I want to congratulate Dr. J. Finland is the correct answer. Did you get the mileage on that? I thought it was 692 miles, Doc. Type it in there. You can Google it while I'm finishing the show here. But so money in motion. All right. Money in motion. This is what it looks like. All right. And I'm calling it MIM for short. I'm basically trying to democratize the knowledge of me to you or people that you know that maybe, you know a lot of this stuff because you've been watching me for 5.5 years. Tell them, watch the show and let's get your money moving. So it offers wisdom for these 3 key financial areas of your life. Your money is always in motion. Never think that it's just sitting there in an account. You're always either earning money or saving money or spending money. Well, what about when I sleep? It still costs electricity for your electric blanket, okay? Or for the electricity in the house or whatever. So money is always in motion in your life. What can we do to improve that? So this has just occurred to me. People are telling me, they're saying, I retired, I'm a client, I watch your statements, but I'm getting kind of bored. What could I do as a side hustle? Well, the rise of AI tools is making it easier than ever to earn extra money. So freelance writing, coding, if you're a programmer, design to virtual assistant roles. So sorry about this. I'm hitting wrong buttons, guys. There is a big need right now for people to do phone support. You can do that from home. I've talked to a number of folks, even working for large brokerage firms. It's like, are you new at this? Well, yeah, I am. And I'm just, supposed to be screening calls. I'm not a trained broker, but, I work 3 days a week. And so there are opportunities out there. And the best way to find those is to look in AI, believe it or not, and just say, hey, I live here. I'm looking for this kind of gig. How can I make this happen? So digital product creation is another one. Selling digital products remains a top way to generate passive income. And again, if not for you, somebody you know, or a child or a grandchild, all right, affiliate marketing, content creation. I mean, I know there are people that are putting together PowerPoints they're outsourcing to somebody who doesn't have time to do it. They put it up, in a PowerPoint presentation, send it back in a zip file and make $200 or whatever. So all kinds of opportunities, AI and personal finance. So people are creating apps all the time. This is particularly interesting. And then they need people to test it. Hey, we'll pay you $250, download this app and answer this 1-hour questionnaire on what you found, what you like, what you didn't like. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're basically creating their own in-house Nielsen company for product development. Makes a lot of sense. Gen Z and millennials are driving the spending and income growth through both traditional employment and flexible tech-enabled side hustles. You will see more, not less of this going forward. I think it's an exciting change in the employment demographic of America. All right. Saving is second. All right. If you have money sitting in a checking account, you just simply can't do that anymore. Okay. There are companies out there, banks out there, and some of them are credit unions where you can get a 5% APY. All right. Annual percentage rate for a year over 13 times the national average. You can find it. And remember, there is a $250,000 limit on your money now. So unless you're putting in 500,000, and if you are, you probably should be investing some of that, but I digress. You're insured up to 250, so don't worry about the bank that you might not know if they're online. Go for the rate and lock it in, because if you're using this for an emergency fund, it's really helpful to do that. All right, really helpful to do that. So pay down high interest debt, automating debt payments and prioritizing high interest balances can free up cash for future savings. That's really the key here, is freeing up cash for savings. So all these 3 work together. You earn money, you save money, and then you spend money. If you're spending less, that frees up more to save, all right? And then once you see your savings grow, that inspires you to, yeah, maybe I will take that second side hustle and try to improve my financial situation there. So makes sense to me, I think. So, all right, smart utility management. We have to do this here in the Brown household because we run our air conditioner. I'm a native Floridian and I still get warm in the summer, but there are ways to just turn up the fans, save 15% or more on utility bills. And what's especially cool now is, at least here in Chicago, the utility companies will send you an alert. You know, you're using more this week than you did last week. Have you got a extra, condenser running on your air conditioning? Just things to be aware of, okay? It's just money that you can save that you'll never get back. It's like unnecessarily idling the car, with gas. It's not so bad at $3 a gallon, not so good at $5 a gallon. All right. So spending, consumer splurges and trade downs. So this is pretty important, right? Think about this. And this isn't on the list. And I've mentioned this once before. What am I probably correct? I was thinking 800 miles. Well, I bet Doc's going to find that number, but that border for Finland is pretty astounding. No wonder they wanted to be a member of NATO, right? So people splurge. They want to enjoy life. They work hard for their money, and I get that. But one of the things that you can do is say, you know what, if I'm going to spend this much over a budget, first of all, you need to have a budget, some semblance of a budget, so you know if you're spending over and beyond your means. And again, if you guys, everybody listening to this call has that under control, then you know somebody in your life, either a friend that you would have to be very ginger with expressing this to them, or a child or grandchild where you could be more assertive and say, you know what, maybe if you didn't spend money here, you could have a travel or an experience where you go and do something fun. All right. So value-driven shopping, people seeking deals, waiting for sales. Alice is great about this. Alice clips coupons still. She's always we've been needing to buy new luggage for about 4 months. No, I'm waiting for it to go on sale. It goes on sale for 5%, but I've seen them for 20%. It's like, okay, we'll wait. It's not like our luggage is falling apart. So, and that's just money saved. But the best thing to do, rather than just save it now, we'll spend it on something else, is say, you know what, let's go straight to the savings account with that. All right. These three relationships with money all work in tandem. And it's important that you understand that you earn and you then save. And finally, you spend. The less you spend, the more you can save. The more you save, the more you have an incentive to earn because you see your net worth growing. The more you then have an incentive to save even more. And the incentive you have to spend less because you're just enjoying having closer and closer relationship with financial freedom. We're going to talk more about this as Money in Motion continues to evolve. So wellness and sleep products, this is really important. The number one thing you can do for your health is get good sleep. And definitely my life has improved since I've insisted on 7. I'd love to get 8. It never happens, but 7 hours a night. And invest in your sleep, folks, and take it seriously. Overall, consumer spending is expected to rise 2.3% year over year, with discretionary spending intentions ticking up for the first time. This is good. We need consumers spending. So don't think that I don't want spending by consumers, but I don't want you spending beyond your means, and I don't want you just idly watching by while your loved ones spend beyond their means. It's not good for them. It's just not. So take my advice on that, okay? All right, get my mouse going here and let's go back to the show. See the first two components that I mentioned. If you want to spend more, you need to earn and save more, and they go together. That first 10% of what you make, and I would say when you're young, you ought to start with 15 and just get used to it and set it aside, saving. And once you reach enough of an emergency fund for 3 months of living, then invest it in the market. It's just that simple. That is how all of this works. We had a listener ask last week when we sent our survey out. We'll be sending surveys out this Monday. So we send surveys out the Monday after the show. This Monday, we're actually going to be announcing that we're doing our second quarter client review. So if you're a client, you'll get an email from us, and it'll be a private podcast where you can see the performance. We did this last month for May. We're now going to be on a quarterly schedule where you'll see in July, and then again in October, and then again in January, the quarterly performance in detail with charts so that you can understand how your investments are going. So is it best to have assets in a trust, was this viewer's question. We have designated beneficiaries on most of our 401k retirement accounts. My eye caught the attention on most. It needs to be the word all. But the only other asset would be the house, and that's defined in our will. So what should we do with this? So that's a great question. First of all, I am not an attorney. It's very important that you understand that. It is my opinion that your non-qualified assets, if they exceed $1 million, you should consider a family trust. And remember, this is for liability protection. In other words, litigious actions against you, not necessarily for tax planning. So let me just look you eye to eye and say, again, I am not an attorney. There is really no need to ever put qualified assets. A qualified asset means that the IRS has an investment in your investment. If you have a non-taxable account, meaning a deferred tax account or a Roth, all right, the IRS has an interest in that because they're going to make a portion of that. If you take the money out early in a Roth, less than 5 years, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. After 5 years, it's all yours. But certainly on IRAs, SEP IRAs, 401ks, they're going to make a portion of that. And there's no reason, because those are protected by what's known as the O.J. Simpson precedent, because when he was found guilty in the case way back 30 some years ago, they went after his pension and his 401k, et cetera, and the court ruled that no, those are retirement assets, and there's no way that this lawsuit can leave him penniless. So that all the lawyers jumped on that, and that's now what's known as the O.J. Simpson precedent. So your qualified monies are safe, but our house, it's, if it's not in a trust, if you have a large account that's just a joint account of $500,000 or so, just realize that if someone were to sue you for a car accident or for any reason at all, that would be open and able to be claimed by a creditor. And that's not something that you want to happen. So anyway, it was a great question. Thank you guys for sending those in. It's important that, but I want to answer these for you. So if you have not yet seen my interview with Mike, he was just awesome. I mean, he's just awesome. Mike Melisinos is just fantastic. And we had a great time. And not only that, but I have secured another interview that I'm extra excited about. Paul Gigante. For 30 years, you guys that have known me have heard me say, thank you, Paul Gigante. And I'm going to tell you the story of why I say, thank you, Paul Gigante. It's because he started my career in finance in 1991. Before that, I was writing music for TV commercials. And I'll tell you, it's a fascinating story. Paul is a rock star in the financial services business. I'm very blessed he was willing to give me the time to sit with me and tell me about his career and how he's doing. So the Paul Gigante interview, probably going to be live on the site. It'll be pre-recorded, of course, but it'll be posted on the site probably early August. So hope you enjoy that. Wanted to leave you with this. If you got questions, type them in the chat box. So we've got this 20-second lag right now. So above all else, the stock market is people, right? It is people trying to read the future. What drives the prices of stocks up or down is not impersonal economic forces or changing events, but the human reactions to these happenings. The main obstacle lies in disentangling ourselves from our own emotions. No truer words have ever been said. Just a phenomenal statement by Bernard Barash, okay? So you guys know I'm there on Facebook, I'm on X, I'm on LinkedIn. Follow me. We do our weekly podcasts. I don't see a lot of people this last month or so watching, but it's there, guys. Every Monday I post a podcast. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on Amazon, it's on Podbean. Usually about 5 to 7 minutes, so much shorter than this show, but it just gives you an update, maybe covering things that I don't get to on the monthly show. We always end with this. For we have not been given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. It's the summertime, guys, and the living is not quite too easy, but we're having a good time. We had a wonderful July 4th. I hope you did too. 249th birthday of America. So a year from now, we'll be talking about the 250th and what happened on that day. Hard to even fathom what that's going to be. So if you're a client, again, watch for that client review. And then we have for the clients a major, major announcement coming in late July. Biggest announcement in 14 years. You're going to love it. Few people that have been with us for 20 years have been beta testing this new technology. Love it so far. We're super excited to tell you all about it. Not that we don't want those of you that are just viewers to know it, but it doesn't necessarily affect you. When you get the survey link on Monday, please fill it out. Let us know what's working for you. A lot of people said they liked Market Money in Motion, so we're doing more of those. We're doing those on the podcast too. We're here to serve you. We're here to educate and entertain a little bit, but we're here to serve you guys. All right. Have a great rest of the middle of the summer, and we will see you the second Thursday of August. God bless. Take care.